Welcome back to another episode of Walking Through Blank, and today we are going to be talking about walking through miscarriage. It is something that many women walk through. As I was doing research, some studies say 10 to 15% of pregnancies, others say up to 25% of pregnancies end in miscarriage. And it is something that so many women walk through, but I feel like it's not something that we talk about or really address. So I am very honored today to have my friend Anna, who will be sharing her story with us of walking through 2 miscarriages. So Anna, thank you so much for being here. I am so honored. And I just would like to have you walk us through what your story is.
Yeah, I'm so honored to be here. Thank you. So my story, my husband Chip and I have been together for almost 10 years. And we started dating in high school. We're high school sweethearts. We both came from big families. So since day one, when we knew we were going to get married, kids and family, we wanted all the kids, all the little ones in our house. In about January, so I guess exactly 2 years ago, January of 2020, we started praying, Lord, we'd love to foster, we'd love to adopt, we'd love to start trying for biological children. What does this look like? And we both heard the Lord just say, yes, walk forward. So we said, all right, we're going to walk forward in this. And so February of 2020, we moved to Oklahoma for a 6-month period for Chip's training with the Army. And very quickly, we started our foster care training. And we also quickly found out that we were pregnant with our first baby. I didn't have really a doctor in Oklahoma. So come April, I go back to the Tri-Cities for my older brother's wedding, and I go back to my OB in Bristol. Pretty quickly that you could tell something wasn't right, and the technician was like, do some blood work. We'll get back to you in a couple days. You'll do blood work now, and then in a couple days we'll see if your numbers are going up like they're supposed to or if they're going down. And that moment was scary, but I still didn't know. I knew I'd heard of women, they'd walk through miscarriages, but, I thought, oh, well, God told us to have kids, so this is going to work out. This is fine. So a couple days later, we got the blood work back, and it was actually the morning before my brother's wedding, and my blood levels were going down, and they told us to expect to lose Harper, our little girl. I stayed for the wedding, and the next morning, 3 a.m., got on a flight to go back to Oklahoma. I'd never walked through hurt before, so I think that how I handled that was, all right, well, this hurts and this stinks and I don't know what to do with this, but I'm just going to find as many healing solutions as I can and I'll be okay. And I do think the Lord met me there, but I don't think I allowed myself to fully suffer with the Lord. I think I was looking in the Bible for, quick fixes. How can I feel better today? So we get back to the Tri-Cities, and the Lord graciously provided a beautiful home. It seemed like a season of, okay, like we went through the valley, now we're good to go. Now we're kind of smooth sailing. This past year, April, we got a call, actually a text from you, about a little boy who needed a place to stay for 10 days. And within a couple of days, we had this beautiful baby boy come into our home. We were thinking it would be a couple of days. Fast forward 10 months later, he's still with us. And a couple of weeks after he came into our home, we found out we were pregnant again. And we're just like, okay, Lord, you redeemed all the things we lost last year. So each milestone we got to with this pregnancy was still like a breath of relief, though. It's still like, okay, now we've seen the heartbeat. And we got to find out his gender and name him. And anyways, so we get to 20 weeks, and we have our 20-week ultrasound. They say, okay, well, he's measuring small, but he's still healthy. Heartbeat's good. He's still moving. So we went back 3-4 weeks later, and we were told our earth was shining. We were told that his heart was no longer beating. And my husband was with me this time. But I think we could both say that moment was the darkest moment of our lives. It Lord, you gave us these blessings, and we've already gone through this. Why would we go through this again? And at home, we still have this beautiful foster baby who we also have to pray that any day he could be reunified with his family, which is the goal, which is awesome, but we also adore him as our own. Because of Zeke, our son's size, we were induced at the hospital, and I did deliver him, and so we were able to hold him and meet him, which is beautiful. But also, the hardest thing ever. Now, as opposed to Oklahoma, we come home and we're surrounded and we're in our home and we aren't alone, we're together, and still it's like, God, we're still broken. Like, even with all these good blessings that you've given us, what the heck? Where are you right now, Lord? We don't, what do we do with ourselves? We have all these blessings, but we don't feel your goodness right now. We don't feel the peace and the joy of all that you've given us, because our world was just rocked. I think with this second loss, I really allowed myself to feel the depths of pain in those lowest and those deepest. Deep cries out to deep, and deep responds, because his love is deeper, and his love is also in that deep place. And that's what, in these last few months, in the deepest pain I've ever felt, I've also seen the deepest love that I've ever felt.
Yeah, I think it's walking through it the first time, and then the second time. I can't imagine how difficult that was to feel like, I finally got past 12 weeks, where the majority of miscarriage is happening, and then you keep getting farther along, and then I'm sure you came to the point of asking yourself, is God really faithful? Is God really good? Who is God? What does it mean for God to be good?
Yeah.
So through this season, through both of them, what do you feel like, how did your view of God change through this? And what did he show you?
Yeah, so many things. I feel like in the last couple of years, the Lord has taught me so many things, and at the same time, I'm like, I know nothing. So I've been reading this book by Elizabeth Elliot called Suffering is Never for Nothing. And kind of an outline she gives for suffering with the Lord is that we must accept first our suffering, we must have gratitude for our suffering, and then we offer our suffering. And so I'm going to kind of use that outline to explain some of the things the Lord has shown me or taught me in this. And I think the first part is obviously the hardest step, is accepting. And what I've learned and what I've seen, what I've experienced is that while I'm on this earth, I'm never in the clear. I'm going to face pain and suffering. And I don't have to have my whys answered in order to accept my suffering. And then the second part of that is the gratitude. And this part's hard. The gratitude's hard because we don't feel gratitude. When you lose your baby, you don't feel anything good. Even Elizabeth Elliot in her book said, I learned that I don't have to pray. I don't have to thank God for my husband being murdered. I don't have to thank God for cancer. But what I have to thank God for, what I have to be grateful for, is that he still held the world, that he still held me, he still held my husband's. And that line right there, I think, is what clicked for me, is that I don't have to feel happy that I've lost babies. I don't have to even thank God for death in that way, but I do get to rejoice and be grateful that I will meet my babies again. I do know who holds them. I do know who holds me. To come around to the third part of that is the offering, and for me, the offering looks like surrendering our suffering to the Lord. And again, in the moment, we don't want to because we're wounded, we're hurt. We're like, we gave you our children and you took them. We gave you our plans and you changed them. But what we can't see is the final picture. And one of my recent favorite authors, another one of them, her name's Jamie Finn. She writes about foster care. And she wrote, if we could rewrite our stories, we'd write out all the best parts, because all the hardest parts we'd write out, but those are the parts that we see redemption, and those are the parts that we see the glory of the Lord. But I think, that kind of outline is what the Lord has shown me.
A month or two ago, another friend of ours walked through miscarriage, and I remember texting you and just asking you, what can I do to help her through this?
Yeah.
So I would just love for you to share some of those things, because there were so many different points of things that I had never thought of, things to do, things not to do, and I know you're speaking from your own personal experience, but as people who are helping other people through miscarriages, what are things we should be saying? What are things we shouldn't be saying, or things we should be doing or shouldn't be doing?
I'll just list some things that I shared with you that for me personally were helpful and were not helpful. Some things for me that were helpful were, just people shooting a text that I could respond to or I didn't have to. Just a text that said, I'm praying for you, I'm here, but not asking too many questions, because it's hard to answer the question. Something else that I loved that several people did for me, and I even did I bought for myself, was a piece of jewelry. And not everybody names their baby, not everybody even knows the gender of their baby, but there might be a significant date, like their original due date, or even a color that reminds you of them, or a butterfly, a symbol. It's a tangible thing to have close to you, because you want to hug your babies, you don't get to hug them. Something that people did that was so helpful was Zeke, when we were at the hospital. They came and cleaned our whole house, and when we weren't there, and they took all our laundry, and they brought in new plants, and they made a meal train that we didn't have to interact with people, that people just drop off the food for weeks. And as far as don't, I think, again, pray before you speak. But I've had people compare the loss of my child to the loss of their dog, and to me it's just not really helpful. But I know they had good intentions of trying to relate, but they just didn't know. So I think those are the main things for me.
I think it's also different depending on the depth of your relationship with the person.
Exactly.
Someone you know very well versus someone you don't know that well. It's going to look different. Mm-hmm. Well, Anna, thank you so much for your vulnerability and coming and sharing a painful part of your story, but a beautiful part of your story. So I hope this was a blessing to all of you out there as well, an encouragement to acknowledge this pain in your lives and the lives of those around you who have walked through this. And I hope you've also gained some insight and wisdom on just suffering in general, that whatever suffering you're going through in your life, whether it's a miscarriage or something completely different, God uses our suffering for His good and His glory. It doesn't mean what happened was good, but it definitely does mean He can use whatever did happen for good.